Oh, people, this is Ryder here to review the Ultraman Arc, DX Arc Cube, Ultraman Zero Cube, 15th version. So in tradition of, just like with last with Blazar, where we had the 7 and Ultraman Blazar Stone sets for the Ultraman store, this year we have the Zero 15th version cube. Because this, obviously, it's the 15th version specifically because it's Zero's 15th anniversary. And as you can see here, it's in the same traditional box as the Arc Cubes, to which we have Zero with the Ultra Zero Mantle. Tells us to use it with the 3 Arc items. Again, I really like the blue and red, so it's just really neat. Here we have a look of the cube, like so. And then the back just tells us some basic stuff. And yeah, so let's get it open. So here we have the cube out of the box, to which, as you can see from here, it's in a really nice blue base. I really like this blue that the base is in, and like we got the red too, which is pretty interesting. It's, yeah, I think the red this is the first of a red DX cube and such. But anyways, as we can see from the front here, it's definitely an interesting portrait of Zero because it's not him like dashing through. It's just him standing there with the Ultra Zero mantle, and the background right there is pretty neat. This one is just labeled as EX, and here we have the Zero Sluggers in their like bladed mode and such at the background. So basically, I guess this is Zero's background for his actual cube. Obviously, this is red. This is pressable. This is basically carrying over the second quarter standards of this being quickie. This is B059, and this is obviously the battery cover, warnings, and the reset button. So, oh yeah, I forgot to go over this. Obviously he still has the same properties as a second quarter or a cube and such. So you might notice something weird with the audio with this one. Oops. So obviously, just the activation sound. We'll go over sound mode, and then I'll point it out. So obviously for the phrase line, it is Zero giving a message about thanking people for supporting him for 15 years. And then obviously the next 4 sounds are typical. Obviously the rise sound, grunt, Miriam Coulson, or is that the wide Zero shot? And the color timer. So if you can't tell, I think mine, the speaker of mine is one of those of where it's kind of overblown, which is kind of unfortunate. It's just kind of common with Bandai stuff, or I guess the stuff in general. One of my other examples of this is with my Lockseed Charmin set, where my King Durian Lockseed is just constantly blasting out of the it sounds like constantly blasting out of the speaker and such. So anyways, let's use this with the Arc stuff. Arc Eraser. You're gonna be able to tell this thing is louder when we pair it up with other toys. So there, obviously we just get the normal Zero Rise. But like, honestly, this is such like a really perfect color combination and such. Especially, it helps with the blue being present here, so it helps accompany that, and like the red. It's just, this is a really nice color combination. Then we have the Arc sword. Interestingly, the LED is red, which I guess makes sense. So there we have the Arc wide Zero shot. And then our last thing we have to cover now, the Arc Galaxy. Again, we will only do one finisher. So there we have Zero, here we have Shining Ultraman Zero, and then here we have Zero Beyond. And yeah. Obviously, for the reviews, I will show the solo sound. Really interesting sound. Obviously, this thing will reset when, or turn off when we talk through. But overall, for our first of the Super Ryder Store exclusive cubes, this is really neat, and it obviously makes sense to do it for Zero's 15th anniversary, as he barely has any light. You know, it makes sense to at least have some form of a Zero Cube out there before the premium version. And I think that's why I think the name is pretty valid of just calling it the Zero Cube, but then just in quotations or like in parentheses 15th version. So I think that's a really nice decision on Bandai's half. I kind of like, I know it doesn't make sense to just put in a 15 because it would be confusing in the numbering, because I think it would be Trigger, I think, is number 15. Or, no, I think it's Zet. Zet is definitely 15. Because Jonius is 18. So there. Again, like I said before, this is a Super Ryder Store exclusive, so it'll be a bit more difficult to get. I got this through Macari via buy, to which I did not get this through the Super Ryder Store through buy. I got it through a seller through Macari. But, I would say, because again, Super Ryder has officially partnered with buy for items like this, so I would suggest for you to do that. Especially with the next release, which is going to be the Saturn Armor Cube. It's finally getting merchandise! Or we finally get to see what the cube of that form, or that armor is, because it didn't make sense that it never got, like, it got a vinyl figure like right when it got revealed, but it didn't get a cube. So that's coming out next week, and I'm really excited to see how it is. But I will not be surprised if it doesn't top Luna. But I think, okay, so like, I think I said this before. I accidentally swapped where Gashpon 2 and this cube were supposed to be placed, because this got released before Gashapon 2 because this was released, I think, a week after, or the week after the Arc Galaxy stuff got released. But I'll use this time to I'll use this to talk about my final thoughts on the Arc toy line in a retail sense, just because I think it's fair. Unless, because Siren Armor is going to be a long ways away of being covered, so I can't necessarily hold it until then. But I think retail wise, I think the way, because if you try to compare Arc and like Trigger together, admittedly they are 1-to-1, just because they did kind of lock a lot of like the side stuff to like Gashapon and Candy Toy, and then like obviously the mandatory stuff, basically things within the show or what released in retail, and then like obviously, I mean, I think at this point like Trigger was actually pushing through with like premium sets. I don't think Arc really is, even though again, um, Arc does have 3 lined up so far, but like at the same time, from what we know is programmed, there's like kind of like a lot. There's like 3 more sets they at least need to get through, and we know there's at least going to be a memorial set. So it's just like, or not. I wouldn't necessarily say. I hope it's not a set. Just at least just put all 4 cubes together with the Arc Riser and call it good. But I think like comparing, if we had to compare the Arc toy line to the Trigger toy line, I'm kind of more inclined to like, I kind of been enjoying the Arc toy line a bit more. I just think I think I've just been kind of enjoying Arc cubes a lot more than the Hyper keys. Just I don't know. I just think there's like a lot of more aspects of Arc cubes I prefer over Hyper keys. So like I just think it's kind of like an invalid point for people just to like kind of dismiss the Arc cubes all because Trigger already did it. Like, yeah, no duh. But like at the same time though, like for me actually experiencing the Arc cubes and such, and like what I said before, especially with like Trigger's line, I think again when you put the Arc Cube, when you put the retail line together with the Gashapon and Candy Toy stuff, I think the Arc line definitely does a lot better job at like giving us a variety of ultras as opposed to the Trigger toy line, because obviously the Trigger toy line only prioritized whoever showed up in the show, and then plus Tia, and then like we had that random Gashapon set of Zero and Dyna, and then Cosmos was an apparel, like a stupidly expensive apparel item, and then everyone else was relegated to premium. But I get it. It's just because within Trigger itself, it prioritized the kaijus. I think it was ultimately a smart decision for Arc to dismiss the kaiju gimmick entirely, so then they can actually be able to push out the ultras. And I think that is kind of a lot more beneficial in terms of like giving us variety of ultras as opposed to what Trigger tried to do. And yes, it does suck that not everyone has their own DX cube that makes sounds, but like ultimately, like Bandai was never going to do that. Like Bandai would not want to invest on the time to try to make a DX powered cube. That would be cool. They literally have the resources to do that, but they don't want to and such, because I think to them it's just going to be a lot more easier to like push out like cubes that don't have that cubes that are already pre-programmed, to which I don't mind. Like I think for sure the Arc line definitely is a lot better than the Blazar toy line. However, like yeah, if you've already picked up Trigger, I don't think there's really any incentive, and if you're like really like stuck up on like really liking how Trigger's toy line works, I don't think the Arc toy line's really for you and such. But if you've never picked up the Hyper Keys or the Trigger toy line, and if you wanted to have an experience with an Ultra line that makes that of the gimmicks making their own sounds, I think the Arc line is perfect. Yes, again, it's kind of being held back by a lot of premium sets, but I think the premium sets this time are kind of a bit more controlled as opposed to how it was in Trigger. So then we don't have things like a Gaia set randomly showing up in Dyna's 25th anniversary. While that was a neat set, it yeah, it was kind of a really random set and such. So that's how I guess that's how I would summarize that as the battery exhausted. Wow. So yeah. um I think that's kind of everything I wanted to say. It's at least I at least don't have to feel like the burden that I did with the Blazar toy line. Cause like I already felt bad enough for basically collecting that line. Like with Arc, like that point is kind of reaching, but like at the same time it's just like I kind of don't care. Like I think I enjoyed what I've been gathering with Arc. I enjoyed what I've been covering with Arc, as opposed to like with Blazar, where it's just been kind of like where like the entire like innovativeness of Blazar's toy line starts diminishing when you cover anything outside of the main line. Arc doesn't have that issue because obviously it took points from Dawn Brothers, and basically was able to carry. It's at least a unique direction that it took, as opposed because again, this is our first. It's the first Ultraman gimmick line that has completely omitted the kaijus. So it's just like, okay, that's interesting to see, and I think they did pretty well. Because honestly, I think for the future of Ultraman, I think they should choose between either just representing Ultras or going full on with kaijus. Basically, what they did with Trigger. Because I think Trigger was basically a line of where they just solely picked the kaijus, and I thought it was decent and such. But I just think for the future of Ultraman gimmicks, they need to choose either one or the other, or go with the case of like I guess Roop, for example, of like trying to find a balance between the two and such. Or obviously, or just I don't know, whenever they do an NFC gimmick, just I mean, like, whenever they do an NFC gimmick, they're gonna go all out anyway, so we can't control them with that, but yeah, I'll have to do this review. This is Ryder, and I'll leave you people by.